Anarchism it's participatory, so that means you don't want to hear a speech about it, but talk about it. And I agree with that, with what I assume is the understanding on that, so I won't say much. Anarchism covers lots of different things. If there's one leading principle which unifies them, it's a simple one that it's based on the assumption that any authoritarian or any structure of authority and domination has to justify itself. None of them are self-justifying, whether they're in individual relations or international affairs or the workplace or whatever. If they have a burden of proof to bear, and if they can't bear that burden, which they usually can't, they're illegitimate and should be dismantled and replaced by alternative structures which are free and participatory and are not based on authoritarian systems. Sometimes they can be justified, so it's not that it's always impossible. Like if I'm walking down the street with my 3-year-old granddaughter and she races into traffic and I grab her arm and pull her back, that's an authoritarian relationship. But if challenged, as I think it wouldn't be hard to give a justification for that relation of authority. And there are others where maybe you can give a justification for it, but it's usually not easy. And at least as I understand anarchism, it's not a system of doctrines. It's just the tendency in human society that continually raises this question, seeks to discover structures of domination and to challenge them. When you find some, you usually find others that you hadn't noticed before. It's kind of like mountain climbing. You climb one peak, and to your surprise, there's another one behind that you hadn't thought about. And it goes right through history, making many achievements, a lot of defeats, but in general progressing. So I think there's far more consciousness today of the nature of structures of domination than there was at an earlier period, and many have been overcome. But it's not straightforward by any means. So if you go back, say, 150 years in the United States, it's probably the same here, but I know the States better. Go back 150 years to, say, the area where I live, eastern Massachusetts, the center of the Industrial Revolution, beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. At that time, the mills were being formed around Boston, and they were bringing in working people, what were called factory girls, young women from the farms, Irish workmen from downtown Boston, working in the Lowell and Lawrence mills, and they had a very free and lively press at the time, which they themselves ran. This was before the period of commercial press domination, and the general press was much more diverse and much more free and much more lively than it's ever been since. It's probably the peak period of freedom of the press in the United States and also in England. And the press is quite interesting. It was written by the participants. Their assumptions are what are relevant here. They just took for granted that wage labor was virtually the same as slavery. No big difference. They had no influence from European radicalism. Never heard of Marx. Nothing of this. It's just the ordinary assumptions of people who think reasonably about the world. Wage labor is illegitimate. It's like slavery. This is right around the time of the Civil War. Northern workers in the American Civil War fought under that banner, that wage slavery is like chattel slavery. In fact, it was even the position of the Republican Party. It was a fairly mainstream position. Even got editorials in the New York Times about it, believe it or not. And they also took for granted that the industrial system is totally illegitimate. It's just a form of feudalism to which people are driven by essentially violence or starvation, and has to be overcome. Those who work in the mills should own them. It's taken for granted. The feudalistic industrial system was destroying their culture, and it was a rich culture. I mean, these people didn't go to school, but they read contemporary literature, and they were involved in what's called high culture. I mean, an artisan, an Irish shoemaker if he could afford it, would hire somebody to read to him while he's working, current political or literary work, and all this is being driven out of their heads by the nature of the factory system. Well, without going on, these are understandings about the nature of freedom and domination that have been lost. So it's not pure progress. How far they've been lost is an interesting question. My suspicion is they're right below the surface. And when the issues arise, right now, working people in the counterpart of the mills will recognize the relevance and accuracy of these basically anarchist positions. And it's the same in other kinds of relations, family relations and others. And it's those who are anarchist activists are trying to discover for themselves just what all of this means, and as far as they can, interact with others to try to help them discover it too, and commonly decide on ways of dealing with it. That's anarchism as I understand it.